way in the healthcare industry.
It was one of the most memorable days of my life. September 6th, 1969. I was 6 years old, and I was about to compete in my very first swimming event. In that very same pool that you see my sister and I sitting on the edge. I was 3 in that picture. She was 6. My parents and our family belonged to a country club. And every year at the end of the season, so September, they would close the season out with a huge day of events. And you could play shuffleboard, and you could play volleyball, and you could do tetherball and swimming. Swimming was going to be my event. My parents saw that passion in me. And I waited for 3 years to be able to compete. 6 years old. I sprung out of bed the day of the event, and my mom immediately started the preparation, because I'm one of those kids, right? I wake up completing the sentence that I started the night before. Braided my long red hair, and she piled it up on top of my head. My sister's little hand held it up there. My mom took the yellow cap, snap, onto my head. Next, my favorite purple goggles. I slithered into my red, white, and blue flag bathing suit. My mom took a real long white shoelace, and she strung it through the back straps. She tied it in a bow, and then she double knotted it. That's how we held our straps back up in the 60s. We didn't have those T-back bathing suits. I was ready. We piled into the car as a family. The minute we got there, I ran down to the pool because I knew I was going off first. 6 to 8 years old, I was the youngest person ever to compete in this event. I walked up to lane 6. That's what they had assigned me. And I was right next to the official. He was all dressed in white, and he had a black gun in his hand. I stood behind my block, and he said, "Swimmers, take your mark." I knew what that meant. I climbed up. I was getting up there. I was ready to go. Then he said, "Get set." I threw my hands behind me, and I looked down to the other end of the pool, because that's where I was heading, and I was going to go fast. Boom! Off went the gun. I belly flopped into that pool so hard. Best belly flop ever. I wish I was rated on it. I remember putting my head down, and I swam my heart out. I paddled and paddled and paddled, and I vividly remember taking only 2 breaths. 2 breaths, 6 years old, 25-yard pool. I got to the end, and I lifted my head, and I looked around. Not only had I finished that race, I had won. I had won the very first event my parents had ever entered me in. Let's talk about what my parents did for me that day, because I can't thank them enough. They empowered me to succeed for a lifetime in both my professional and my personal life. Now, I have competed my entire life in swimming events. The picture on the left is me in a high school meet. The picture on the right is one of my Ironmans coming out of the Ironman swim in 2009. All my life I've competed, and all my life I've had events where I have won more. I've won numerous trophies, but nothing compares to the day I brought home that little plastic and gold swimmer that's standing like this, and I still have it. I still have it. It's still on the shelf in my parents' home where I grew up. And I look at that and I think, that trophy changed my life. Today, we're going to talk about empowerment, but we're going to talk about it from a generational standpoint. How can we empower our teams to work more synergistically, to work in harmony, and so that we have just an amazing team to work with and for? And we heard a lot about that today, right? It comes back to every walk of life. We have teamwork. And if you have a great team, it's a winner. It's definitely a winner. So we're going to break it down into 3 pillars. Number 1, we're going to look at the generational categories, because we have to know who we are in order to be able to perceive other people. Then we're going to talk about communication. And then last, we'll wrap it up with healthcare tech. How is it impacting the healthcare industry, in other words? And so first, let's identify the generations. So we have currently 4 generations in the workplace. And this is the first time this has ever happened before. So we have traditionalists that are born from 1927 to 1945. Do we have any traditionalists today? Yep, always one. Thank you very much. All right, they make up 2% of the workforce, so they're still there. Second, we have the baby boomers. Baby boomers are born from 1946 to 1964. Where's my boomers? Yep, you always make up the biggest category, and you are the biggest category currently in the workforce. Then we have the Generation X, which I fall into, 1965 to 1977. Any Xers? Great. And then, last but certainly not least, into the workforce, Generation Y. Where are my Ys? Great, we have a really nice, Robert raised his hand. We have a really nice mix here. And so it's really important for us first to understand what is our generation. Then, more importantly, we have to understand how are we perceived. And that's where the relationships come into play. And so think about it like this. We're all immigrants to each other's generation. And we have to have respect for the other person's generation. So next up, we're going to talk about communication. Communication is the cornerstone of business. If we don't have great communication, we're going to have friction occurring. And so we've really got to focus on how can I customize my communication so that I can better interact with my clients, with my patients, with my colleagues, with my boss, because it works in all aspects of your life. So I always say to people, figure out what language you're speaking first, then figure out what language your client or your colleague is speaking. Because if you're ballroom dancing and somebody else is trying to two-step, that's not going to work out very well for us, is it? Right? So figure that out. Where do they fall and what do they expect of you? So as far as communication goes, there's some guidelines for different generations. So baby boomers are all about relationships. And I think most of you in the room that are boomers will agree with me. You want to establish that personal relationship first, and then you talk business. Right? So you want that one-on-one conversation. You want the personal phone call. You want the handwritten thank you notes. Establish the relationship. Get to know the person first before you talk business. Generation X, they are all about efficiency and effectiveness. Right? They have a checklist for the day, and they want to go down and check everything off. And so they typically will use email and text, so that they get their answers. Then, once they finish their work, they want the social aspect. And so it's a little bit opposite of what the baby boomers are expecting. And so they do want that work-life balance, it just comes in a different order. Your Generation Y, they want to be connected all the time. Because they are. That's the way they grew up. 24/7, they are connected. They don't think anything about answering a work email on a Saturday or a Sunday. But what they do expect is if you are contacted by them, that you reply pretty darn quick, right? And this happens, I still hear this happen in the offices that I go into. A Generation Y will call a baby boomer and say, ask them a question. And this is the answering machine message that they get. Hey, this is Jim. Thanks for calling. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you in 24 hours. Generation Y looks at the phone and says, what? Why does it take 24 hours for them to answer my simple question? So you have a different perception of time and what's reasonable. What's a business-like perception of how you're going to get back to people? So important for us to understand. Another area of friction, and I see this everywhere I go. Any of you think we have an issue with who thinks what the proper dress code is? Yeah. This is a big one. This is a big one. So let's break it down into the generations because each one has a different opinion about how you should dress at work. Your traditionalists equate dressing up with respect. And so they are dressed to the nines. Do you know that phrase? Dress to the nines? It's a traditionalist phrase. It came from the war. So they have the full suit, the cufflinks, the tie, the pocket napkin. And napkin, what's it called? Handkerchief. See, I'm not a traditionalist. The spit shine shoes, right? My father, 90 years old, still lives in the house I grew up in. My father spits shines his shoes every Saturday before he goes to church on Sunday. Guess what I learned to do as a kid to make money? I'm pretty darn good at it if you need it. Baby boomers, they've worked with traditionalists long enough to know they have to dress appropriately at work. And baby boomers tend to dress up a little bit more, but they know they have to. At home, very casual. Okay? Our Generation X, take it down a notch. They are a little bit more casual, and so a coordinate instead of a full suit, or for men, you'll see them wearing khakis and maybe a soft-collared polo shirt, right? So they take it down a notch. Generation Y looks at these categories and goes, what up? What's the big deal? The way that I dress does not define who I am and how I work. However, it's important. It's important to pay attention to what people expect of you. So here is a tip for you that you can use in any situation. Dress to the oldest generation. So look at the picture. On the left of the screen, we have a doctor, a patient, and an assistant. The doctor is dressed appropriately for interacting with the patient. There's only 2 people in that picture, isn't there? But he's still dressed appropriately. Okay, so think about dressing up, dress down. If you're seeing Generation X and Generation Y in your practices all the time, you can wear your scrubs every day, right? But here's what you could think about doing. If you are, especially if you're a younger doctor and you have a larger clientele of traditionalists and boomers, you can wear your scrubs all day, but if you know Mr. Smith is coming in at 11 o'clock and he's a traditionalist, go into your office, have a button-down collar shirt and a tie and a white lab jacket. Put it on and go out for that appointment. That relationship that you just improved is going to take you miles in the way that the person perceives you. It really is going to help. So it's baby steps. We just do little things that make a difference in building the relationship. Last, we're going to talk about our healthcare impact. So if we have that harmonious team that's working so well together, and I know you've all experienced this, you've gone into a dental office or you've gone into a medical office or a hospital, and you see the team that is just giggling and laughing and talking and getting along, and they really like each other. They share stories, they hang out on the weekends, they go out to lunch together. That is a beautiful thing. And when that happens, it trickles down into your clientele. And so your patients pick up on it. And they are going to be your walking brand ambassadors. They become your billboard out there praising your name. I love my doctor. I love my hygienist. I love the medical place I go to, right? And they are just out there referring patients to your practice. Healthcare has a natural attrition. We have to keep new patients coming in the door in order to keep our practice afloat, let alone increase the practice revenue. If we get that harmony working, we're really going to be increasing our practice revenue, and we're going to see growth instead of that flat line. So here's my challenge to you. Number 1, identify your own generational category. Number 2, get to know the people around you, the people you're working with. What generation are they from? Because you might not be communicating as well as you could be. And number 3, start to customize your generational interaction with people, and you'll see a huge difference. You're going to see a huge difference. So different than Alyssa's call, I got the call a couple weeks ago. And this is how it went. Hey, it's Carol. I took your generational workshop a few weeks ago in Portland, and I'm just calling to tell you this crap really works. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, tell me more. She said, no, seriously, this generational crap, it really works. And I said, well, tell me what happened. She said, I have this colleague, and I have been working on a project with her, and we've been going back and forth by email, and I've been trying to get this information from her for weeks. And she said, it just isn't working. I was about to send her another email, and I said, maybe I should try that generational stuff I learned. She said, I'd taken the handout that you gave us and I put it next to my work phone. I looked at it and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm a Generation X. She's a baby boomer. I've been going about this all wrong. She said, so I decided I was going to get out of my chair and I was going to go down to her office and we were going to have a personal conversation, even if it killed me. And that's what I did. I sat in her office and we talked about her kids, we talked about her weekend, we talked about her family, we talked about her hobbies, and lo and behold, opened the doors of information. Everything I needed for that project was available, plus more. The other thing it did for me, it enhanced the relationship 100%. My colleague and I get along better than we ever have. So I'm here to tell you that generational crap really works. My final challenge to you today is, how are you going to customize your generational conversations and communication so that you can increase your business growth?